person who stays in the meeting so that the recording continues. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Hello, good morning, all of you. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Good
Yes, sir.
morning,
Good morning.
sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you that I'm facing some issues because my laptop is in the service center and it may take around a week or 10 days to get that done. So I'm taking my lectures from the tab. I'm still requesting other teachers to just join in and switch on the recording and switch it off because I cannot do that using an Android device. But I'm trying my best to, not let our conversation get affected due to this. So at any point of time, if you feel that you are not able to hear me, there are some issues, just feel free to stop me. If you feel I'm not able to hear you here, just drop in a message on WhatsApp or just give me a call. Someone of you could do that so that I realize that I'm not audible out there. Okay. So let us then quickly begin with our discussion. Let me cast the presentation for you. Just give me a minute to do that. So is the slide visible to all of you now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Amazing. Great. So let us begin. Here we are going to discuss about how hemorrhagic diarrhea, which is caused by E. coli O157H7 strain, could be brought under control by the microbiome that we possess. Okay. So here we are discussing about the ability of the microbiome, specifically the Bifidobacterium species, because Bifidobacterium species is that species which is known to have an anti microbial activity against E. coli O157 strain, wherein it may not be responsible for killing the pathogen as such, but it is surely responsible for stopping or curbing the infection to a great extent. So there were different groups who have studied as to how Bifidobacterium manages to do this, and the entire study is on the basis of that fact, okay, as to how Bifidobacterium is able to do this. So, for example, they have taken a gnotobiotic mice, which means that a mice which is free of microorganisms, and then they have colonized that mice with specific strains of Bifidobacterium. So there was a gnotobiotic mice which got Bifidobacterium longum JCM1217T strain, while there was another gnotobiotic mice which got Bifidobacterium adolescentis JCM1275T. So these are different species of Bifidobacterium that have been administered into gnotobiotic mice. And post this, these mice were challenged with E. coli O157H7. So this was to see as to how Bifidobacterium is able to fight against this particular pathogen, and that to which of these two species of Bifidobacterium is more effective. So let me tell you that this study has shown us something very interesting, wherein they have realized that Bifidobacterium longum JCM1217T is a strain which is a protective strain which can fight with this pathogen and will not allow hemorrhagic diarrhea to take place. But that's not the case with Bifidobacterium adolescentis, okay? Because it fails to prevent E. coli O157 induced hemorrhagic diarrhea. So it clearly is an indication that every species of Bifidobacteria may not be protective. Okay, though Bifidobacterium is considered to be a probiotic, it is considered to have good or potential health benefits, but it doesn't mean that every single strain or every single species of Bifidobacterium is going to be good. That's not true. Okay, so longum is that species which is beneficial for fighting against the pathogen, while adolescentis is not found to be effective. Now, obviously, there are going to be several questions as to what is the mechanism or how does this exactly work, because knowing the underlying mechanism is so significant, right? So there have been some detailed analysis which has been carried out, okay, and from that study, it has been found out that if you compare both the gnotobiotic mice, one which was colonized with Bifidobacterium longum and the another one with Bifidobacterium adolescentis, there was no difference in terms of the virulence factors which were produced by pathogen. Matlab, pathogen was ultimately carrying out the same mechanism. The pathogen was expressing the same set of virulence factors. So no difference was observed in the physiological or pathological markers at all. Okay, because it was seen that they were expressing toxin, because please understand that for hemorrhagic diarrhea to take place, that toxin has a very important role to play. Shiga toxin. Okay, so Shiga toxin was indeed being produced. Shiga toxin is abbreviated as STX2. Okay, so that was being expressed, which is the major trigger factor for the hemorrhagic diarrhea. And also, if the condition worsens, fatality, that is death. Also, the other virulence genes were getting expressed. Okay, the amounts of immunoglobulin A or mucin being secreted or the pH, everything was exactly the same. So then the question arises that if E. coli is able to carry out its normal virulence mechanism without any change, then how is longum actually protecting us from this particular pathogen and its consequences? So the only difference that was found was the concentration of Shiga toxin in the serum, in the blood, was remarkably low in case of the mice which was colonized with the Bifidobacterium longum species, which is the protective species. While in case of the mice which was colonized with Bifidobacterium adolescentes, it was observed that there was a phenomenally high concentration of Shiga toxin in their bloodstream. And that is indeed an indication that everything is being expressed, but Shiga toxin fails to enter the bloodstream in case of colonization with Bifidobacterium longum. So what is Bifidobacterium longum doing here? So it is probably promoting some defense functions of the epithelial tissue such that the transport of Shiga toxin from the gut to the bloodstream doesn't take place. So it is indeed acting on the permeability of the epithelial cells so that the toxin is not transferred into the bloodstream. Okay, so that's how the actual mechanism is. Now, other than this, they also studied metabolites which were there in fecal samples of both the mice, one which was having the protective strain and the other one which was having the non-protective strain. And this investigation was done using NMR so that you could easily identify the metabolites. And it was seen that the preventive strain, Bifidobacterium longum, जिस mice में present था, they were showing a phenomenal efficiency in utilizing carbohydrates, which means that they were able to metabolize carbohydrates very effectively. They produced a very high level of acetate, that is a short chain fatty acid, as compared to the mice which was colonized with Bifidobacterium adolescentes, which was a non-protective strain. So here we are talking about two aspects. The first aspect is that they are able to utilize carbohydrates very effectively. And the second aspect is that they are producing acetate in a very high concentration. Now, please understand that along with this, it was also seen that the mice which had a protective strain within it was carrying out a very efficient energy metabolism within it. So all genes which are required for triggering up or speeding up the metabolic rate were being expressed in the mice having the protective strain. And also it was seen that with acetate production, they were in a way bringing about a strong immune response. They were trying to trigger a strong immune response by using acetate as a signaling molecule so that the immune system realizes that there is something wrong going on and it needs to be worked on. Okay, so the fecal acetate concentration was phenomenally high. Now, they worked with multiple strains of Bifidobacterium, not just these two, because these two were the preliminary, strains. So they ended up working with 3 different preventive or protective strains and 2 different non-preventive Bifidobacterium strains. And they also wanted to realize that, okay, metabolically क्या होता है ये हमने देख लिया. हमने ये भी देख लिया कि सिग्नलिंग के तरीके से वो एपिथेलियल टिश्यू का परमिएबिलिटी कंट्रोल करते हैं ताकि शिगा टॉक्सिन जो है वो ब्लड में अब्सॉर्ब ना हो सके. लेकिन जेनेटिकली ये प्रिवेंटिव और नॉन प्रिवेंटिव स्ट्रेन्स एक दूसरे से कितने अलग है ये जानना बहुत जरूरी था. एंड इस वजह से they also did genomic analysis. And when they did the genomic analysis, they found that the protective strains had an additional system in their genome which helped them in effective utilization of fructose as well. Wherein normally, when you have to metabolize fructose, organisms use isomerases to convert it. But they had ready-made mechanisms to directly start with the metabolism of fructose, which was seen only in these protective strains. So this shows that they were trying to assimilate as much as energy as possible to give a tough fight to this particular pathogen, which is E. coli O157H7. Because remember that for any kind of a war, especially when you speak about an immune system based fight, there's a lot of ATP required because there's a lot of cell proliferation, there's a lot of cell differentiation that is taking place in the background. So for all of this, the energy requirement, the ATP requirement is going to be quite high. Also, if I want to produce SCFAs like acetic acid, which are acting as signaling molecules to bring about this kind of a response against E. coli O157, I need to understand that where does acetic acid come from? It comes from the metabolism of carbohydrates. It comes from the metabolism of fats. So they need to have an active metabolic profile. Only when they have an active metabolic profile, SCFA secretion is feasible. It's possible. So they have developed all possible mechanisms to efficiently utilize carbohydrates to gain energy and to produce a lot of acetic acid. That's the whole picture that we are talking about in this particular scenario. Now, they also saw that, this particular mechanisms that they have of efficient carbohydrate utilization or of, making or increasing their metabolic rates, if these genes are affected in any way, then you cannot stop E. coli O157 from launching an infection. So knockout strains of mice were created wherein they were, they were colonized with bacteria lacking these genes. So when they lack these genes, are they still able to fight E. coli O157? Then the answer is no. So that indicates that indeed that gene of carbohydrate metabolism has significance in fighting against this pathogen. Okay. So also, a different mechanism that they did was they checked what happens when you provide acetate externally. Let us say that a human doesn't have such a kind of a protective organism inside them. And see, you can say that, ठीक है, उनके अंदर अगर Bifidobacterium longum नहीं है, मेरे पास अगर एक patient है, let us assume, okay, this is just an assumption, कि मेरे पास एक patient है और मुझे doubt है कि इसकी body में E. coli O157 है. So ऐसे केस में मुझे ये समझना बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है कि मैं उसको रातों रात Bifidobacterium longum देके ये एक्सपेक्ट नहीं कर सकता कि हाँ अब इसको कुछ नहीं होगा. ऐसे नहीं होता. ऐसे क्यों नहीं होता? उसके पीछे भी रीजन है स्टूडेंट्स. क्योंकि उस बैक्टीरिया को जो आप एडमिनिस्टर कर रहे हो, भले ही वो हेल्दी बैक्टीरिया हो, लेकिन उसको जाके गट कोलोनाइज करने में वक्त लगेगा. Is it going to be an overnight process? No. It will have to face some competition. It will take some time to adapt. Right? So we need to understand that just administering the bacteria overnight is not going to help. It's not going to be an effective strategy. So under those circumstances, if I directly provide them ready-made acetate, is it going to work? So they administered acetylated starch to the mice, which were having non-protective strains. They did not have protective strains at all. They were given non-protective strains. So after administering acetylated starch to them, it was seen that they started excreting high amounts of acetate in their feces. And it was also seen that their survival rate had improved even though they did not have protective strains within them. So that clearly indicates the role of acetate. That acetate is so significant in protecting an individual or improving their survival rates if they are suffering from an infection which is caused by E. coli O157. Right? So this is an image which depicts this. So you can very well see that the left-hand side, it indicates the preventing Bifidobacterium strain. Okay, and on the right-hand side, you have the non-preventing Bifidobacterium strain, right? So when you speak about the non-preventive strain, look at the image carefully at the base. So when you look at the image carefully at the base, you will realize that at this part specifically, you will realize that there are gaps. Can you see these gaps? Which are permeability gaps, which allow materials to pass through this epithelial lining and enter into the bloodstream. So you can see these blue colored star shaped structures. These are nothing but Shiga toxin, which is being secreted by E. coli O157H7. So when they are secreting this particular Shiga toxin, it is having gaps within the epithelial tissue such that this toxin can cross the barrier and enter the bloodstream. Right? But when you see the protective strain, you could see that it has decreased the permeability such that the Shiga toxin cannot pass anymore. So this indeed is an indication that protective strain is not allowing, or it is blocking the translocation of Shiga toxin such that its concentration in the blood is low. And if its concentration in the blood is low, it's not going to bring about a severe hemorrhagic situation. I hope this makes sense to all of you. So, although we are saying that there are a lot of commensal organisms in the gut which are protecting us against pathogens, and they have a role, or they have the ability to fight against these pathogens so that they don't colonize our gut and we don't suffer from a specific kind of an infection. But we need to understand that the study is not this simple. When you want to find out that how a bacteria is fighting against a specific organism, the study is not simple. Because if you remember, कुछ देर पहले जब हमने ये discussion चालू किया, तो हमने ये कहा कि 2 gnotobiotic mice लिए गए. ग्नोटोबायोटिक मतलब क्या? जर्म फ्री, जिनके अंदर कोई और माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज्म है ही नहीं, और उनको फिर एक स्पेसिफिक बैक्टीरियल स्ट्रेन के साथ कोलोनाइज किया गया, जो था बिफिडोबैक्टीरियम लॉन्गम, एंड दूसरे में था बिफिडोबैक्टीरियम अडोलसेंटिस. बट आई विल नॉट बिलीव दिस स्टडी ब्लाइंडली. मैं इस स्टडी पर आंख बंद करके भरोसा नहीं कर सकता कि ये जिस तरीके का रिजल्ट मुझे माइस में दिखाई दिया, उसी तरीके का रिजल्ट मुझे मेरे बॉडी पर, यानी कि ह्यूमन बॉडी पर भी दिखाई देगा. ये मैं आंख बंद करके भरोसा नहीं कर सकता. क्या तुम मुझे बता सकते हो क्यों? कैन यू टेल मी व्हाई एम आई डाउटिंग दिस? एनीवन? I'm sure you guys know it. Why am I doubting this? There has to be some reason, no?
Because there are other organisms in the gut microbiome.
And so, why
And
should
sir,
I
in
not believe if there are other organisms in the gut?
sir, in germ-free mice, we are only studying the effect of one microorganism, and in human gut there are lot of different species, so there will be the interaction between them.
And the result may differ because of it.
Hello, sir, you are not audible.
Hello, sir. We can't hear you, sir.
I have messaged Sir on WhatsApp.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. So where did you lose me? Can anyone tell me where you lost my voice?
Sir, you have asked about the question.
Okay, okay. So I was saying that when you are talking about a bacterial species as an individual entity, wherein it's not in contact with any other microorganisms, please understand that the way that they would behave is going to be completely different. And the way these microorganisms would behave when they are in a community is going to be completely different. Okay? You have studied this in terms of biofilms also. That जिस तरीके से organisms biofilm में behave करते हैं as a community, that is very, very different from how it would behave individually. Individually, it would be probably susceptible to almost every single antimicrobial agent that you see. But when they are in the community, you would see that they become resistant to majority of the antibiotics as well. Sometimes some organisms, they don't express virulence factors when they are individually, but when they start interacting with other organisms, you will see that they become pathogenic because they start expressing their virulence genes. So we need to understand that this kind of a study, this research was done in a gnotobiotic mice with only one organism given in there, and that was obvious because they wanted to make the study simple. It's not that they did something wrong. Okay, because if there would have been multiple microorganisms, there would have been so much of cross-metabolic interactions taking place that it would have become impossible to deduce that what is the exact mechanism. So surely it becomes very much essential to study one organism individually and find out that what their role exactly is, how do they fight it. ये समझना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है. Agreed, completely. But at the same time, it also adds to the disadvantage that we don't know if it's going to work in the same way when it works in a community. When it's a part of a microbiome, I don't know if it would react in the same way. So that's a threat, right? Now, obviously, it's going to be very significant that if we know that there are microorganisms which can help us fight infections, we should know the mechanism by which they do this, okay, so that it could be used as one of the tools to deal with such infectious conditions, okay, and at the same time, we will have to, we will get options of new strategies to deal with these kind of infections which have been really very fatal and dangerous. And probably without using antibiotics, without using any drugs, we may be able to cure individuals of these kind of conditions, wherein you are just giving them appropriate strains as probiotics along with prebiotics so that these healthy organisms are able to effectively colonize and bring about the beneficial health effect that we are expecting it to bring about, right? The next thing is somewhat repetitive, but it takes us to a little more details of understanding. We have already discussed that the gut microbiome has a huge effect on the way how we carry out metabolism, okay, how we store excess food material in the form of lipids, which we call as adiposity, and also in terms of obesity, right? And I've already told you that these studies have been carried out using two mice, which we call as germ-free mice, the GF mice, and the CV mice, which we call as the conventional mice. No doubt that it has been proved that when there are microorganisms, there is short increase in the total body fat because they have a tendency to accumulate fat. So you will see that conventional or wild type animals which have microorganisms within them have the tendency to accumulate fat as compared to those organisms which are germ-free, which are free of microorganisms. This obviously has been related to presence of short-chain fatty acids because people have been saying that short-chain fatty acids is responsible for triggering metabolic rate and for accumulation of fats also.
But yes, when you have more of such microorganisms which, tend towards having adiposity, towards accumulating a lot of fat globules, then it becomes dangerous, then it becomes disastrous, right? We have also seen earlier that when you compare the lean and the obese mice or the lean and the obese humans, you will see that the obese gut microbiota is basically going to have mechanisms to allow efficient energy extraction. We have also discussed earlier that gram-negative organisms, when present in excess, there is going to be an increase in the availability of lipopolysaccharide, which also leads to inflammation and also leads to insulin resistance, and that too systemically, which means throughout your body there is strong insulin resistance, which leads to diabetes. So obviously this is an indication that as gut microbiome has a role to play in inflammation, has a role to play in insulin resistance based diabetes and obesity, these are good targets to prevent these conditions. And at the same time, we can use beneficial set of microorganisms to see to it that the conditions do not worsen or are brought under control. So there has been comparison between the GF and the CV mice, the germ-free and the conventional mice, and they have given you the stats. The stats says that the gut microbiota's effect on the host body's energy balance has been found to be 42% more in terms of total body fat in a conventional mice as compared to the germ-free mice. मतलब करीब 50% फैट किसी भी वाइल्ड टाइप ऑर्गेनिज्म में जिसके पास माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स है उनमें ज्यादा होगा as compared to the germ-free mice, right? And it was also seen that their diet consumptions, they changed. Okay, they drastically changed when there were microorganisms. For example, if they have a lot of body fat, it was seen that their chow consumption, that's the rat food consumption, it reduced to 31%. Okay, and their metabolic rate was extremely high, and that's obvious because they are going to have a lot of body fat within them, so the metabolic rate is expected to be high. But let me tell you that when this balance is disturbed, when you have more of organisms which prefer adiposity, then this higher metabolic rate gets affected because metabolic rate in that case would fall, and there will be accumulation of more and more fat, but it is not being burned. Now that's disastrous. Why is that disastrous? Because if you go on accumulating fat, but if it is not being metabolized, if it is not being burned, you're going to turn obese. So a proper balance between adiposity-based bacteria and the bacteria which try to keep the metabolic rate high has to be maintained. If that is not maintained, it's going to be disastrous. Also, it was seen that, we have discussed this earlier also, that when there is gut microbiota, they try to take up as much as metabolic roles because they would try to digest things that we cannot break down because we don't have enzymes to break it down, like some dietary polysaccharides जिनको break down करने के enzymes हमारे पास नहीं होते हैं लेकिन उनके पास होते हैं, तो वो उन dietary polysaccharides को भी break down करते हैं जो हम नहीं break down कर सकते हैं. And they provide us with the monomers, they provide us with the monosaccharides. Obviously they will also use some amount of it, but they are in a way trying to provide us with more energy sources. Okay, and also we have seen that how the structural morphology of the small intestine would change because there is going to be an increase in the density of capillaries, in the density of blood vessels, right? Also, it was seen that some healthy bacteria in the gut, they would lead to an enhancement or an increase in the activity of an enzyme called as LPL, a very important enzyme called lipoprotein lipase. Because this is that enzyme which is responsible for breaking down the stored fats, the neutral fats in your body, triglycerides जिनको हम बोलते हैं, जिसकी वजह से हमारा body fat increase होता है. क्योंकि सारे फैट्स हमारे बॉडी में स्टोर किए जाते हैं इन द फॉर्म ऑफ दीज ट्राइग्लिसराइड्स कॉल्ड एज triacylglycerol. Triacylglycerol, students, is nothing but having a glycerol backbone. Glycerol is having 3 hydroxyl groups. So instead of these hydroxyl groups, if you are going to esterify fatty acids, okay, and if all 3 hydroxyl groups have been, esterified with fatty acid, then you are going to refer to it as triacylglycerol. So LPL is going to break down triacylglycerol to release free fatty acids, increase metabolism so that fats are also burnt regularly. That is very important because if fats are just going to be stored in your system, hum phukte jayenge, and that is dangerous, right? And once fats are broken down to release fatty acids, you need to understand that it is basically going to bring about an active metabolism of fatty acid, and fatty acid is a very good source of ATP. And for muscles and adipose tissue where ATP requirement could be high, fatty acids is a very good source. And remember that this LPL enzyme activity is increased in response to suppression of fasting-induced adipose factor, which is FIAF. Now, what is fasting-induced adipose factor? So it is an factor which is an LPL inhibitor. It inhibits the LPL enzyme. Okay? So if it is going to inhibit the LPL enzyme, you have to understand that triacylglycerol का जो breakdown है fatty acids release करने के लिए, that is not going to take place. Okay? And triacylglycerols are going to accumulate. Now that is horrible, right? So FIAS has to be suppressed so that LPL can remain active. क्योंकि LPL active रहेगा तभी fats जो है वो break down होगा, और अगर LPL active नहीं रहा तो fats accumulate. तो अभी आपके अंदर आपके गट में कौन से माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स है ये बहुत मैटर करेगा. क्या आपके गट में वो माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स है जो LPL की एक्टिविटी को एनहांस करके रखेंगे बाय सप्रेसिंग FIAS? देन यू आर इन अ गुड स्टेट, देन यू आर डूइंग गुड. बट अगर आपकी गट में ऐसे माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स है जो FIAS को एक्टिवेट करते हैं और LPL को इनहिबिट करके रखते हैं, देन बर्बादी चालू होने वाली है, बिकॉज वी आर गोइंग टू accumulate a lot of fats within us, and that's going to be disastrous because that's going to push us towards obesity. So see, here I need a homeostasis, here I need a balance. I need a balance between organisms which enhance LPL activity and which enhance FIAS activity, because FIAS will also be needed, because when I do not have enough fat reserves and I need to store reserve food material in the form of triacylglycerol, I need FIAS to stop LPL from breaking down more triacylglycerols because I don't have reserve food material. So I need to have a balance because both of these factors are equally important. Are you understanding, students, what I'm trying to say, or is it just going blank? Please let me know. Can someone tell me what is FIAS? Geetika, can you tell me what is FIAS? Can you hear me, Geetika? Yes?
So fat molecule.
It's okay if you don't know the full form. Tell me what the function of FIAS is. तुझे चाहिए तो मैं full form बता. FIAS is fasting induced adipose factor. अभी मुझे बताओ उसका फंक्शन क्या है?
Sir, it is the inhibitor for LPS.
LPS.
Sorry,
LPS is lipopolysaccharide.
LPL, sorry.
And what is LPS?
Lipopolysaccharide.
Mm-hmm. It's a lipoprotein lipase. What does it do? Can you tell me? Paribha, can you tell me what does LPL do? Paribha, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you tell me what does LPL do?
Because it's the fats in the adipose tissue.
Okay, I couldn't hear you clearly because your voice was very low. Nishant, can you tell me what does LPL do?
Yes, LP. Uh, mm, it leads to
Mhm.
accumulation of triacylglycerols.
It leads to accumulation of triacylglycerol. Are you sure? Lipoprotein lipase. नाम में ही जवाब है.
It breaks down lipids.
Sorry, Blake. Yes.
It would break down lipids, right? It would release fatty acids from triacylglycerol. Why do you want to release fatty acids from triacylglycerol? You're burning down fats. Remember this. You're burning down fats which are stringent molecules to be broken down. Okay. Your system also tends to store it more than break it down. This is a fact. So we need to understand that these microorganisms are helping us by enhancing the activity of an enzyme, which is lipoprotein lipase. What does this enzyme do? This enzyme is going to actively break down lipids. It's going to actively metabolize lipids and release fatty acids so that we don't go towards obesity. But who inhibits LPL? That is
FIAF.
FIAF. Right? So if FIAF is active, LPL will not work. So if LPL will not work, triacylglycerols will not be broken down. So fats will accumulate. So I would need both. Remember this, FIAF is not a villain. ये भी याद रखो. Because your body also needs reserve food material in the form of triacylglycerols. But within a limit, not beyond that limit. So I need FIAF when I need to store fats in my system as reserve food material. But beyond a point, when I have the required reserve, I would want to break down the excess. So for that, FIAF needs to be suppressed so that LPL can be active and fats could be broken down. Is this concept now clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
Yes. Yes. Anyone wants to ask
just
anything?
one thing. Sir, can I suggest one thing?
Yes. Bolo na.
Sir, can you go a little bit slow while telling things, and give us some time to read what is there in the slide after you complete that point.
Sure. Not an issue. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So when you talk about characterization of obesity associated microbiota, there has been some interesting studies that have been carried out. Like, for example, you will see that people have been first trying to understand that what the composition of microbiome is in obese individuals, and then compare it with the microbiome of lean individuals who are not obese, and try to understand that which are the organisms which are different in both the microbiomes, in the obese individuals and in the lean individuals. Because the ones which are different, they are the ones which will be considered as culprit for obesity. Okay? So you try to find out that which are those organisms which might be having a role in pushing an individual towards obesity. Right? Now, this study, which was led by a team of Lay and his colleagues, it was found that in obese individuals, two sets of organisms were much lower than in lean individuals, which means non-obese individuals. What were those two strains? One is Bacteroidetes and another is Firmicutes. So ratio of Bacteroidetes to Firmicutes was found to be lower in obese individuals as compared to the lean individuals. Now, what does this indicate? This indicates that a higher ratio of bacteroidetes to firmicutes is necessary to have an active fat metabolism so that a person is not obese. Okay? So as I said that you first compare both the microbiomes of an obese individual and of a lean individual and find out which organisms are different. Other than that, you could also see that abundance किस organisms का है अब obese individual में as compared to lean individuals. और उस स्टडी में से ये सामने आया हुआ है कि the ratio of bacteroidetes to firmicutes is lower in case of obese individuals as compared to that of lean individuals. So that obviously indicates that these two organisms seems to have effective role in keeping your metabolic rate high so that you are not pushed towards obesity. So if their ratio is disturbed, it's a clear-cut indication that you may end up accumulating a lot of body fat and that's not going to be metabolized efficiently. So you end up turning obese. Is everything clear to this point? Can we move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So when obese individuals were put on dieting, this is a very common trait that we see around in people, wherein you see that people go on strict diets. You would have seen people going on carbohydrate diet, wherein they don't consume carbs at all. They stay away from carbs and their diet is mostly rich in proteins. While there are people who have also fat-restricted diets, these days there is another trend, I'm sure that most of you would have heard of it, keto diet. Have you heard of it?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Do you know what a keto diet is? Anyone? What's a keto diet? So keto diet is a low carb, high fat diet. Okay, it's a low carb, high fat diet. And you try to include those things in your diet which are rich in vitamins and minerals. And there are a lot of restrictions of what you can eat and what you cannot eat. And let me tell you, it doesn't suit everyone also, first of all. Because how active your metabolic system is in breaking down fats is very important to decide whether keto diet will suit you or not. So there are many people who start with keto diet and instead of losing weight, what happens with them is either they gain weight or there have been kidney and liver related malfunctioning which has been reported. So you have to do such kind of diets only under advice of an expert dietitian. People do not understand this, that your system is designed in a specific way and you are unique. You cannot compare yourself with A or B. A or B might be doing keto diet, they might be doing strict diets, but that may not suit you completely because your system is very different from their system. So what they have done over here is they have put obese individuals on a weight loss plan for around a year's time period, wherein they were on a strict carbohydrate restricted and fat restricted diet. And what they could see was very interesting. क्योंकि जहां पर obese individuals में bacteroidetes और firmicute का ratio कम देखा जा रहा था as compared to lean individuals, वहां पर अब डाइटिंग करने के बाद वो रेशियो का ओरिजिनल वैल्यू रिस्टोर हो रहा था, which means that diet also has a huge role in modifying our composition of microbiome. So when they were put on a strict diet plan, it was seen that the composition reversed from the earlier condition. Okay? So that clearly indicates that these two species and their ratio has a very important role to play in monitoring or in bringing about metabolic changes. And it's very crucial to note that the bacteroid to firmicutes ratio is kept comparatively higher so that obesity could be avoided. Now that could be done by restricting your diet, basically, because to alter the microbiome composition, diet is very, very significant. And maybe along with diet, physical activity. Because when you do physical activity, your entire metabolic profile is bound to change. And when your metabolic profile is bound to change, it will also alter the kind of microbiome that you possess. Okay? So this study has been very crucial and people have been thinking about how this can be brought into practice. So please understand that सिर्फ माइक्रोबायोम चेंज करके तुमको अगर लगता है कि ओबेसिटी से छुटकारा मिलेगा तो ये सही नहीं है, क्योंकि ओबेसिटी को गवर्न करने वाले मल्टीपल फैक्टर्स होते हैं. माइक्रोबायोम इज जस्ट वन ऑफ देम. I've been telling you since the beginning that your lifestyle, the kind of stress that you go through, and several other environmental factors, all these influence your tendency, your body pattern, your diet patterns, and we have to understand that just playing with the microbiome is not going to help us get rid of obesity. Yes, to a great extent, you may be able to manage it by doing transplantation of feces from healthy or lean individuals, or transplantation of the gut contents directly from the cecum. You may be able to do it. And they have done this to prove that, you know, when you have a gut composition like obese individuals, and when you give that composition, when you administer that composition to a lean individual, the lean individual starts putting on weight. And when you do the vice versa, when you transfer the microbiome from the lean individual to a obese individual, it tries to restore healthiness in that particular system. So you can see the second point here, which has been clearly mentioned, that mice receiving microbes from obese donors gained more weight over a 2-week period than the recipients of the lean microbes. जबकि उनका डाइट सेम था, उनको जो खाना दिया गया था वो एग्जैक्टली सेम था, लेकिन जिन चूहों को माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स मिले हैं फ्रॉम ओबेज इंडिविजुअल्स, they were putting on more weight as compared to the mice which had received microorganisms from lean individuals. So that clearly indicates that indeed microbiome has a huge role to play over there. And that is because on the basis of which microorganisms are present, it would be decided whether they are able to carry out active, effective metabolism or not. It's the game of energy extraction. You need active organisms in your gut so that you can maintain a balance. But if you have only a specific type of organisms which tend to bring about metabolism in a way wherein you are just storing in more and more amount of reserve food material in your system, then it is disastrous. So obviously, as I said earlier, that there are a lot of things that you need to consider: microbiome composition, your diet, your metabolic rate, your original body weight, whether you are obese. All these factors need to be considered when you are carrying out this kind of a study. And there is a study which has been reported that the proportion of Bacteroidetes which is present in the microbiome was higher in children from rural Africa who had less calorie intake than in children from Europe. Okay? So this is to indicate that आप क्या खाते हो उसके बेसिस पर आपके गट में क्या होगा ये भी इन्फ्लुएंस हो रहा है. So the kind of diet that you have will shape up the kind of organisms that you would have in the gut. They also showed that the mice which were fasting, which were not given adequate food, they had a higher Bacteroidetes to Firmicutes ratio as compared to the non-fasted mice. So see, that's why now you should understand why all diet plans that you see speaks about intermittent fasting. You would have heard of intermittent fasting. wherein people prefer to eat limited number of times in the day and they are fasting for the rest of the time period. So there are several diet plans wherein people have 2 meals in the day with adequate gap between both the meals, and they don't have anything throughout the day. This fasting will help to maintain the higher bacteroidetes to firmicute ratio. But if you're going to trucify every another hour, which is very common with us, then obviously the kind of microbiome that we are going to possess is going to be towards having the ones which have the tendency to push us towards obesity. I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say. आपने देखा होगा काफी सारे ऐसे लोग हैं जो intermittent fasting करते हैं. Have you seen it? I think one such plan is the Dikshit diet plan, which is very famous these days amongst people, even amongst youngsters, wherein I have heard people having early lunch and early dinner with an 8 hours gap between both the meals, and then around 12 to 14 hours gap between the dinner and the lunch, so that there is an effective weight loss. And that also, let me tell you, will have an effect on the microbiome composition that you possess, right? Though that plan has been designed with a point of view of insulin release, because the more you eat, the more your system secretes insulin. The more your system secretes insulin, the more glucose uptake takes place. The more glucose uptake takes place, there's going to be more accumulation of reserve food materials. And I've told you that your body has an ability to store only very little amount of glycogen, students. Please understand this. अगर आपको ऐसे लगता होगा ना कि हम जो सारा हमारे बॉडी में जो भी शुगर जाता है, all that sugar is stored in the form of glycogen, then हम वो गलत फहमी में हैं. हमारी बॉडी में उतना ही ग्लाइकोजन रिजर्व होता है जितना एक दिन में एग्जॉस्ट हो जाए. Are you understanding this fact? You will have glycogen in your system which will be exhausted in a single day's time. So then, where is the rest of the glucose, the rest of the sugar going? It's being converted to acetyl-CoA. From acetyl-CoA, it's being converted to a fatty acid. From fatty acid, it's being a part of triacylglycerol. It's being stored in the form of fat. So we need to understand that the basic idea of such diet plans is to see to it that insulin release in the system is controlled. And when it is controlled, the sugar uptake by the different cells of your body is also controlled, thereby maintaining balance in metabolism. Right? The same thing is happening over here. And remember that when you talk about, continuous eating, wherein we tend to do this, कि हर 1-2 घंटे में हम कुछ ना कुछ चबाते रहते हैं. What happens under these circumstances? Your body is not getting an opportunity at all to look towards all that you have stored till date. You are just making new cupboards to store more kapda in it. Kapda here is the fat. And how is that reflecting? In the form of obesity. And that's why fasting is good. I don't know if I told you about this earlier, but I have problems with the kind of fasting or the notion of fasting that people have. People believe that fasting should be like wherein you eat milk, when you drink milk, you eat fruits, you eat potato, you eat sabudana. And I always tell people that this is not fasting, this is feasting. Because whatever you are consuming under the name of fast, all that is extremely carbohydrate rich. So you are probably taking up double the amount of carbohydrate that you would have taken up in a normal day by doing this fasting process wherein you are actually feasting. Let me tell you, sabudana is the worst thing for your gut. I don't know how many of you know this. It is one of the worst thing for your gut. Leads to ulcers. in the gut because its metabolic products are all acids. Fasting has to be like rosa, wherein you're not consuming anything. See, if you are consuming any damn thing, is your body getting an opportunity to look for what is in storage? Because you are giving it a supply, why will it look at storage? For it to break down what is stored, you need to give it a chance where you're starving it. You're not providing it anything. And that's very good. But yes, scientifically, I won't support such a fasting to be done very regularly, because that's also not good. Excess of anything is not good. But whatever fasting intermittently you do has to be of this kind. Are you understanding the logic behind why I'm saying this scientifically? Any questions that you would want to ask, or you have some points to place, please feel free to do that. It has to be a discussion. Yes, students?
सर लेकिन अगर भूख लगेगी तो क्या करने का?
Very good question. So, first of all ना, एक चीज हमेशा ध्यान में रखो, फास्टिंग हर एक के बस का होता ही नहीं है, और उसके पीछे भी साइंटिफिक लॉजिक है. हम यूं ही मतलब किसी भी टॉम डिक एंड हैरी को फास्टिंग करो ऐसे एडवाइस नहीं दे सकते. अभी इसके पीछे रीजन ये है कि हम सबके मेटाबॉलिक रेट्स बहुत अलग हैं. ओके, तो ऐसा बिल्कुल हो सकता. नाउ आई एम ओबेस, so if I am going to fast, I will sustain because there is lot stored inside already. But if there is someone who is very slim and whose metabolic rate is very high, because of which their body tends to break down and oxidize all that they consume and doesn't store much, if I make them starve like this, that's not going to work. And they shouldn't do it also. Because you need to understand that you have to identify what your body requirements are. See, you cannot generalize everything on everyone. सबका बॉडी सिस्टम एक इंडिविजुअल एंटिटी है, और उस एंटिटी को क्या सूट होता है इसके बेसिस पर आपके डिसीजंस होने चाहिए कि मुझे क्या कंज्यूम करना चाहिए, क्या कंज्यूम नहीं करना चाहिए. इसके पहले भी मैंने आपको बताया होगा कि आपको ऐसे बहुत लोग दिखेंगे आपके ही बैच में, या आप खुद उसके एग्जाम्पल हो सकते हो, जहां पे लोग बकासुर की तरह ठूसते हैं बट उनके शरीर पे 1 आउंस फैट दिखाई देगा नहीं. और दूसरी तरफ ऐसे लोग होंगे जो कम खाते हैं बट मोटे होते जाते हैं. ओके,
Yes,
so this
yes,
is basically because of your metabolic rate. So you have to identify, and your lifestyle has to be in and around your metabolic rate of what you consume, how much physical activity you do. All that has to be around this. And this is the basic reason why मैं आपको ये चीज भी बता रहा हूँ. मैं 2 मिनट और लूंगा. I know we are coming towards the end, but I want to take 2 more minutes to convey this so that that question leads to a conclusion. That आपने कई किस्से ऐसे देखे होंगे कि लोग जितने जल्दी वजन गेन करते हैं उतने जल्दी घटा भी लेते हैं. ऐसे भी केसेस होते हैं. ओके, मतलब they gain weight and they find it very easy to lose weight also. It's very easy a task for them. And you would also see people who go to the gym, work out, lose weight. The moment they stop that physical activity, the balloon phenomena takes place. They start growing in size. This is basically because when you do a physical activity, your appetite increases. Okay? And your appetite increases, that's okay. You're consuming more food, that is okay, because your metabolic rate is high as you are doing heavy physical activity every time. But when you stop that physical activity, when you stop going to the gym, it takes time for your appetite to come back to the normal. So till then, you're trusifying. But there is no physical activity to make up for this trusification, and you end up gaining weight. You would have seen that these gym people, especially who build their body, get their muscles, the first phenomenon that you will see in them after they stop gymming is getting a pot belly. Because storage of fats has started in their system, because they have stopped the process of physical activity. So all this runs around your metabolism. So first you need to know how your metabolic system is before you come to this kind of a conclusion, you know. Because only then you will be able to decide that what indeed is suitable or beneficial for you. I hope I'm making sense to you over here.
Yes, sir.
So next time when you fast, whoever asked that question, I'm sorry I didn't note your name, but whoever asked that question, next time you fast, just keep it in mind that if you are hungry, don't stop yourself from eating food, because your system is different from someone else's system. So भूखे रह के खुद को तकलीफ देने के बदले, if you feel, see, everything comes by habituation, everything comes by practice. So you have to, you know, step by step control your diet. ऐसे अचानक से तुम पूरा रोजा नहीं कर सकते. I'm sure that if you talk to anyone who keeps a roza, they'll always tell you that the first roza is always difficult, because habit छूट जाता है ना. But eventually you become comfortable with it. So it's all about habituation. But as I said, that if you feel it's not suiting you, you should not do it at all. You should realize what your body needs are and work accordingly. ठीक है? Anything else that you would want to ask? Okay, I'm just noting down the names. Just give me time. Okay. Yes. Anything else that you want to ask? Yes, no, कुछ तो जवाब दो भाई लोग.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, so I have a good news for you. The good news is your second lecture is cancelled for today. So Niranjan sir will not be taking your lecture. So you can join in at 1:10. I think 1:10 का lecture है आपका, right? So join in at 1:10. And yeah, that's it for today. We'll meet in our next session and continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
हेलो, रिकॉर्डिंग स्टॉप करने के लिए मैम को बोलना पड़ेगा ना?
हाँ वही
वही।
लेक्चर हो गया.
हाँ, हो गया.
अच्छा,
सेकेंड लेक्चर नहीं है.
नहीं
श्वेता
है.
मैम को प्लीज मैसेज
नहीं है,
करने
निरंजन।
भेजना आप.
निरंजन सर का नहीं है. अरे सब
अच्छा.
लोग लेफ्ट हो गए.
नहीं है ना निरंजन सर का लेक्चर. कोणी
नहीं
सांगितलं
है,
श्रावणी?
श्वेता मैम को बोलना ना रिकॉर्डिंग स्टॉप करने के लिए.
हाँ,
सचिन
रुक,
सर
बोलती हूँ. रुक 1 मिनट, हाँ बोलती हूँ.
हाँ हाँ हाँ.
हाँ हाँ, रुके हम.
सर ने फास्टिंग का बहुत अच्छे से बताया.
मैं करती थी, कुछ नहीं होता फास्टिंग करके भी.
नहीं होता यार. और सब लोग ऐसे
मैं तो
फ्रूट
12th में
साबूदाना खाते.
एक मिनट हाँ रिकॉर्डिंग
मेरे को इतना ही बोलना है कि रिकॉर्डिंग चालू है.
हाँ रुक मैं कॉल करती अरे हाँ रिकॉर्डिंग चालू है मैं कॉल करूँ मैम को रुक
हाँ हाँ कर दो.
एक मिनिट लीव होते आणि मग call